Hi guys, it's Charla from That Girl Cooks Healthy. Today I'm going to show you how to make these delicious, crispy, crunchy kale chips using your dehydrator. They're low fat and low carbohydrates, so they're great for people who want to lose some weight. So these are the ingredients you're going to need to make your kale chips. First of all, you will need some kale. You can use any type of kale. I'm using the dinosaur kale, but any type of kale will work for this recipe. It really doesn't matter. You can get the dinosaur or you can get the curly kale, just any type. I'm also using some lime instead of using olive oil to make the recipe oil-free. I'm using some nutritional yeast, which is a vegan alternative to cheese. I also have some other spices, some smoked paprika, some onion powder, some garlic powder, and a very small amount of pink salt. You can add other herbs and spices if you want to, but for me this is the combination that I like the most and works the most for me. So the first thing I'm going to do is just mix the spices with the nutritional yeast. It doesn't really matter which way around you do it. You can do it the other way where you can add the nutritional yeast to the spices, but I'm just doing it where I'm adding the spices to the nutritional yeast, and then I'm just going to mix it together to make sure that it's all combined and there's not an uneven balance of, for example, the smoked paprika versus the nutritional yeast. So you just really want to make sure that it's mixed together before you're adding it to your kale chips. So the next thing that you want to do is wash your kale. So I'm just placing all of my kale in a colander. You can do it any other way. You can just place the kale directly in the sink and wash it, but I just prefer to do it in the colander because I use the colander for most things. And as you can see there, I'm just using my hands just to thoroughly wash the kale, because it's going to have some debris and some other types of nasties that we don't really want to be eating. So I'm just going to make sure that each of them are washed. So you really want to spend a few minutes like I'm doing now, just washing each leaf to make sure that there's absolutely nothing on them and that they're clean. And then afterwards you want to make sure that you bloat it dry, and that's very important that you dry it completely before you move on to actually seasoning it. So this is what your kale should look like now after you've dried it. I actually didn't record the whole process of drying it because it takes time, and there's not really anything to really see. You just want to get some kitchen paper, some kitchen towel, and just dry it to make sure that it's completely dry. As I said, it's really important that you do that. So now you just want to grab a large enough bowl and put the kale to the side, and then you just want to grab each one individually, and we want to cut out the spine because we're not going to be using that. We don't need that as part of the kale chips, so you're just going to cut around it as best as you can. Alternatively, you can use your hands to break up the kale into some small chips, but I find it easier specifically for the dinosaur type of kale to use some kitchen scissors and just cut the spine out. And once you have cut the spine out, you want to cut the kale into small pieces. The size of the kale chips is really down to what you want them to be. Some people like large kale chips, some people like smaller kale chips, and it also depends on the size of the actual kale as well. So I'm just cutting them into just small bite-sized pieces, and I'm going to do that with each of the pieces of kale, so I'm not going to bore you by showing you all of it, but you get the idea of what you need to do with each of the pieces of kale. So now we're going to add our seasoning, and we're going to start by adding the lime juice. First of all, you don't want to use too much lime juice or any type of juice, because we only want to use enough just to saturate the leaves, and it will take too long for them to dehydrate. So you're just going to use your hands and just try to coat it as best as you can. It can be a little bit of a task doing that. I find that the leaves do tend to fly out, but you know, it's all part of the fun when you're cooking. So you'll see a few of mine might just, you know, fall out, but you know, that's happened. You know, that's really how things work out sometimes. So once we have done that, we're going to add the seasoning, which is the nutritional yeast, with the other ingredients, and you just try to pour that in and sprinkle it in you know, in a way that you're trying to get all of the chips, but you're also going to be using your hands as well to coat the chips with the nutritional yeast. And again, as I said, it will start to fly out. They'll go everywhere and they'll start to have a mind of their own and fly everywhere. But the main thing is that you will coat all of them as best as you can, because you want that cheesiness. And I promise you that the cheesiness, the cheesy element of the kale chips is the best part of it. I'm so addicted to these chips that I have them every single day, and I try my best to make sure that I have some left over. So once you make them, I promise you are going to love them as much as I do. So now you need to add your kale chips to your dehydrator. Depending on the model and the design of your dehydrator, this is going to vary. My dehydrator is a stackable, so it stacks on top of each other, and as you can see there, I'm just adding each of the chips side by side onto the tray. You don't necessarily need to have them with a big gap. It's okay to have them, you know, next to each other, but not overlapping to the point where they're piling on top of each other. So it's okay to have a few of them, just on a few on top of each other, but the main thing is that you want to make sure that there's a gap with them, or else it's going to cause uneven spots when you're dehydrating the chips, because you'll find that some of them will be crispy and others will need to dehydrate a bit more, and it's a bit frustrating when you have some that are ready and some are not. You have to take them out and then you have to put the other ones back. So just try as best as you can to leave a reasonable space. So now you're going to dehydrate the kale chips for 4 to 6 hours at 60 degrees or 140 Celsius. So this is what the kale chips look like after a few hours. I think mine took about 4 hours. As you can see that they're bone dry now. You can even feel them. When you feel them, you can feel that they're bone dry, and the color of them as well is more of a dried green look. And that's what you're really looking for and feeling for when you are checking the kale chips. So there you have it, guys. These are the delicious, crispy, crunchy kale chips to eat at your leisure anytime you feel like it. Thank you so much for watching this video, and thank you for your support as always. Enjoy.